So I hope you've all dug down and got your crystal balls out for the what this performance-based design brief actually means, because I had to get mine out in preparation for this discussion, because that's the only really way you can sort of approach these things for the time being. You can sort of take your learnings from the market and understand how these things will potentially impact things. But I think there is definitely there's a collective thought here about how these things will impact the market, and I think that's what I think I've left an opportunity for definitely for others to come in and have a bit more of a conversation on this later on, because there's lots of good intent here, and I think there's a lot of opportunity as well to push specification more at the front of things. But it's whether the market is going to be willing enough to do it, and whether the building surveyor is going to be willing enough to pick this up and run with it. So speaking of running with it, I'm probably going to have to start running with this presentation. Can someone give me the head nod if they can see my blue screen of Speckle Delight? Is it there? Yeah, Roberto, you can see it? See my PowerPoint? Killian's giving me the thumbs up. Look at him, he's a gorgeous fella. Look at him.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool, great, thank you guys. I'll crack on and stop talking rubbish. Now, so the performance-based design brief is really what I'm here to sort of have a chat about today. And I do sort of mean that sort of soft little intro there. Like I'd love to leave an opportunity way down the line in terms of once we get through what this stuff is all about, to get some feedback from you in terms of your gut feeling about the market, how the market responds to this. Look at this presentation as a conduit to having a discussion at the end, because it's certainly not just about my crystal ball opinion about what is going to happen. So first of all, I've got to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about Speckle. Now, I can see by the list of folk here that a lot of you guys are cross-Speckle. There's a few people that are not. So I'll go through that introduction fairly quickly in terms of what Speckle is all about. I mean, there's two of us. I'm an older version of the fella up there on the right, with much longer hair now and a lot more informal. But Dave has also had a haircut since then too. But we've been working on Speckle now for the last couple of years. So Speckle's a really cool little project for us that we have, I guess, taken from a basis of let's educate the market in terms of National Construction Code. Let's make sure people are front and center and really taking advantage of what we see as a better approach to market. The 2019 National Construction Code, it has a better baseline to bring up the performance of building envelopes, whether that's thermally, from a moisture perspective, acoustic perspective. There's a lot of stuff there that we think is an overall benefit to the market. So we jumped ahead, started creating applications, and we've developed those out and launched them some time back. Just in case you are a Mr. or a Miss developer, we'd love to include you in the team at the moment. So we've got two openings now for 2 more developers to jump in. So yeah, if you have a cousin or a friend, feel free to send them our direction. So in terms of really that high level snapshot view, we have a bunch of core applications, lots of well-known suppliers. A couple of those suppliers are actually on here today. Kingspan, represented by Killian Smith, is one of them. And Kingspan actually get 2 logos on this. See what I did for you, Killian? Look at that, 2 logos. So we've got loads of users, more users every day, probably 3 or 4, sometimes 5 users every day now. So it's really starting to grow. Lots of products. We've got a couple of confirmed engagements to put more suppliers on here now. So more interesting range of products. So I guess all these applications that we've developed can be further used, and lots of registered projects. That was last week. It wasn't. It's going to be more than that now. So however many there's lots of registered projects. So getting some really good traction now, guys. So it's been an enjoyable roller coaster, and we're starting to track through a bunch of webinars. So those 2 orange ones that I've wiped out there, that's really the last webinar, which was about the J1.5 stuff. So I know a couple of you couldn't quite get onto those, couldn't get the link working, but if you want to talk about that another date, yeah, just give me a shout. And today is that performance-based design brief. And then over the next few weeks, we're going to be straddling through a bunch more. Next one will be workflows, just about how to use Speckle in a more useful workflow. I guess it's about engaging in why we developed Speckle the way we developed it and how you can best use it. So if you want to jump in on that, probably more of a hardcore users type discussion there. And then rain screen systems, I'm going to start talking about the idiosyncrasies of rain screen systems and externally insulating your building envelope. And then transition over into really what is two final webinars there on thermal comfort and JV3. And they are where we're going to be showing you our full-scale simulation modeling, and you'll see that that's right at the beginning of next month. So there's lots to come. Speckle.io/hash-webinars. That's our homepage. So if you want to jump onto our homepage, you can grab some stuff there, and we can go from there. Now, in terms of these apps at the moment, yeah, we've got these cluster of apps here on the left-hand side, going from glazing systems to wall, roof and floor systems. And we've got some building assessment and some other periphery apps. What we're actually doing at the moment, we're combining these reference building and thermal comfort stuff into the building assessment in order for us to be able to do verification modeling to National Construction Code and thermal comfort modeling. So again, that stuff is coming through thick and fast. But that's enough of that. So I hope some of you have seen The Wire, season 3, episode 10. This is Brother Mouzone, if you haven't. Brother Mouzone was speculating about reform. And reform was, I guess, represented by the tower blocks and The Wire being shut down. And reform is also, reform is also what we're really talking about here today, that the fact that there is reform in industry happening at the moment. There are, I guess, political measures being put out to market that will enable us to respond to some of the challenges. It's not just about fire. It's about other things. But there is a response by the government that is pushing seemingly, and as I said, this is a bit of a crystal ball here. Seemingly, it's about making sure there's more transparency in the design process. Now, this performance-based design brief is something that has come through some time back. It's been something that fire engineers have been using for some time now, and it has its original definition within these guidelines, and a lot of this performance-based design brief comes from this approach. And what's happening now is that these design briefs, which we'll go into in more detail in a minute, is effectively being integrated into the National Construction Code in those references there on the right in that little stepped yellow thing. So, what it means is that for you folk out there that are undertaking any performance solution against the National Construction Code, not just fire, any performance solution against the National Construction Code, then you're going to have to produce what is deemed as a PBDB. And we're going to all get used to saying PBDB before we know it. It is a set process, really, that is based on these guidelines to provide an assurance of what the specification is intending to do, how it's intending to meet the National Construction Code requirements, and kind of, locking in the specification process. So it's really interesting, particularly for myself, and I'm sure for many of the rest of you out there, because what it does, it means that there is a potential for specification to be, brought forward and strengthened prior to the tender process, where you've got a design and construct methodology going on, and for it to be further locked in. And I guess I like the idea of that. So there it is. If you're undertaking that performance solution, you're producing that performance-based design brief. So if we just slide that over there now, we can even get a definition. That definition's just being dragged straight from the code there itself. So, when it comes to where it sits, there's not a whole heap directly in the National Construction Code about what all of this is. It's worth saying that most of this comes from the guidelines that have been provided by the National Construction Code. A guideline is not a necessary requirement to meet the clause within the National Construction Code. It's just a guideline, but there's nothing else to follow, right? So going from the guidelines and the definitions in the National Construction Code, we can say that it is as follows. It's a process and the associated report that defines the scope of work of the performance-based analysis that you might be undertaking, and the technical basis for the analysis and the criteria for acceptance of any relevant performance solution as agreed by stakeholders. So let's say it's an analytical approach whereby which all the information that you're going to capture and use within your performance solution is captured, is laid transparently on the table in a report, and is underscored by some agreement that all the stakeholders agree that that performance solution and the specifications within it are correct and have no conflicts. So, you know, when we focus on that element of stakeholders, I'm thinking, okay, cool, you got a wall system. That wall system has been undertaken as a performance solution. Does that is that suitable from a fire perspective, from a moisture perspective, from a thermal perspective? And I believe that's the sort of the focus on those multiple stakeholders getting to an agreement. It's unusual, that term about getting to agreement, but I think we'll get into that a little bit more later. But fundamentally what it does, it scores down on these core principles. You've got to go ahead and produce this. I'm not going to say PBDB all the time. I'm just going to call it the brief, right? And you're going to produce this brief and you're going to undertake an analysis and evaluate that analysis, whatever that analysis is, in order to produce a report, and that report stipulates compliance against the National Construction Code. So in principle, I'm sure many of you guys, sounds about normal, right? There's nothing too crazy about it. I'd probably agree with some of that sentiment, but I'd also say that what this is seemingly doing is kind of formalizing things just a wee bit more. It's giving it far more determined structure. And, you know, I like that because we've focused on this stuff for a while in Speckle. So first up, the brief. Now, the brief is fairly clear. You're going to produce this brief and it's going to have a scope. Most documents have a scope in the compliance world, so that scope might be determining the class of the building, the performance solution that you're undertaking. You add in the stakeholders, those people that are going to interact with this performance solution. So you may have a simple scenario like the wall system, but you may have something that is far more involved, such as a whole building simulation. How that transpires, you know, have a think about that, because I'd like some others to jump in and pay comment to some of what happens in the more complex scenarios where you've got performance solutions that are ultimately interacting with multiple disciplines that don't normally interact, and what could that potentially mean? Obviously, you've got to document stuff, and this is a part of the brief. Obviously, if you're going to do a brief, you're going to document stuff, and then you're going to get to a point where this brief has an agreement with all these stakeholders. So this is this first step, and it's just saying, hey, we're going to go through a process. We're going to tell you what we're going to do, and this is it, and where everyone's going to be in agreement, and then we're going to go on ahead and do something, and that something is going to be an analysis. So where you've got an analysis, you know, again, if you're looking at, I'll keep at the wall systems, you know, if you're undertaking a performance solution against the National Construction Code for a wall, what is the method you're going to undertake? You know, how are you going to model it, or how are you going to test it physically? Might be on the testing side, it might be some sort of waterproofing testing. So a verification pathway, performance solution verification pathway for waterproofing, or if it's just a straight variation on a wall system, it might be just a calculation on Speckle. Yeah, what is that assessment process, and what are the results? So again, you know, nothing too untoward here, right? It's all seems quite standard. The next step is, you know, this. It goes from analysis to evaluate, and for me, you analyze and evaluate at the same time. You don't separate the two out. So here we can see a pathway where they're setting the two out. So it doesn't quite work from my perspective, from a workflow point of view. But then you go through, I guess it's to keep it as broad as possible. But you go through an evaluation of that analysis to, to collate the results, again, to evaluate them, compare if you do need to compare. And effectively make sure that you are reporting something that is meeting the National Construction Code requirements. Again, just Performance Solutions need to do this, nothing else at this point in time. And then the report, again, is structured where you've got this overview to what the report is trying to do, what it's trying to achieve, how it's doing it, who's involved in it, what the analysis methodologies were, what was the evaluation, how you came to the results that you presented, and ultimately a conclusion. And for me, I guess the way I've been looking at this is that it's kind of tying these things together. And who doesn't love a Venn diagram, right? So it ties this analysis, these briefs together, the report and evaluation, to ultimately come to the point where you are defining something. Okay, and I guess my interpretation of this is that, taking directly from the guidelines that are provided is that thing is specification. That thing is having a document that is within the design process, that is specified, and that is has a better chance of not being value managed out of the process and meeting the original requirements. And if you do need to value manage it, let's say, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to have a considered process to do that, which is all undefined, right? There's none of that's defined at the moment. So this is a broad appreciation of how a construction process works. Obviously, we've got loads of different types of construction models, but this is one of them. Let's say you're in design tender. This is where you're producing that collation of documents, that briefing in the report. Effectively, this is one solution. And the interpretations that I'm making is that, hey, this just needs to be something that is really ready for, to go through the life cycle of construction. It's not there to be changed. That this system is not being built up to say, hey, we're going to change this and we're just going to value manage and do the same as what we've been doing for a long time. The D&C contract is probably the one that is worth noting here. That is the one where we value manage quality out of projects, and I think this is what it's here to do, is to try and stop that happening. And it comes with lots of questions. Now, I've definitely got some observations, and this is where I kind of wanted to get a couple of other people to jump in. Now, if anyone wants to kind of jump into this conversation now, I've got a few things that I wanted to raise, but so far, is there any comments that anyone has in terms of their own crystal ball interpretation of how this might transpire with our current processes, and whether building surveyors will pick this up and whether there'll be a force behind it to actually support this process? Any comments? I'd love to hear someone else's voice. Where is he? Let me see who can I pick on. Dave West. I could pick on Dave West. Killian, come on, Killian. What do you think? So Killian, put you on the spot. Killian is from Kingspan. I'll say my favourite insulation company if you give us some interpretation.
You say that to us all, I'm sure. Thank you. I can only say that it's welcome, Darren, in that what it's doing simply is bringing ESD consultancies to the forefront of design, which has always been a failure in the system and the process point of view. So I can only see benefit out of it. Like anything else, Darren, change is change. So we kind of have to just have to accept and move on with new processes and the likes. And I really hope that this is expanded beyond what the fire fraternity has been using it from. So it's certainly it's not intended to be limited to that. We know that.
No. So from a supplier perspective, Killian, you would say there's I naturally think that this has a benefit to you guys, because you can be we all know the supply chain. Supply chain goes through a process of trying to specify things and get products sold effectively. You must see this as an advantage, surely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can. That's honestly yes. You can see commercially the advantage on that in terms of the level of specification documentation that we'd be included and involved in ensuring that correct products identified for applications and you know, putting in that effort and that work. It's nice to make sure that it gets you get a reward from it, and in putting measures in place that consideration needs to be given if that was to be swapped for alternative or equivalent materials. So putting measures in place is ultimately what this is doing. So that helps along the way, and there's other options out there. Terrific.
Barry, you've just turned your screen on there now, because I'm just going to have to pick on you as well. So Barry is over AIS, and David West, he's put his screen on now, so I'm going to have to pick on him because he's got all the brains. So Barry, tell us, give us a bit of interpretation, but from yourself in terms of whether you think this is something that I guess an insulation supplier would benefit from. What's your thoughts, Barry? You've seen it all. You just got that mic on mute. I'll ask you to unmute.
Sorry, apologies for that. Darren, in terms of representing a manufacturer or being a material supplier, there are a couple of things in providing information to the market and to people to assess. One, we believe that there should be full disclosure. So that is your product, warts and all, the good points and also the bad points in your marketing literature, and also to put it in a form that the relevant stakeholders can assess other stakeholders. For argument's sake, you can, if you're dealing with, say, acoustics or thermal or fire or moisture, then the information put forward should be such that a fire engineer can look at the moisture management or the acoustics to know that the system that he's looking at from a fire point of view will meet the requirements of the other entities in the whole design process. That was a quick observation.
Yeah, I hear you, Barry. Yeah, look, it's that, you know, none of us want to operate in silos, and as a silo segue, I'm going to try and get David West into the mix here. So I almost got to work with Dave. Dave's at Inhabit, and he's a facade engineer with lots of experience. Would have loved to have worked with you, Dave, more closely, but I'm sure you've got some I guess positive interpretations on where some of this stuff sits, or maybe realistic. I don't know. Put me in my place.
First of all, Darren, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you a cynical response in the first instance. At one level, what the NCC is asking consultants to do is to produce a separate document over and above the performance specifications they're already writing for design and construct procurement. So cynically, it's yet another layer of something that we already do. Having said that, in creating a clear framework, it's attempting to standardize that process more, and it's also attempting to, I guess, make it more of a requirement, a compulsory pathway to actually incorporate how you're going to measure the performance that you're specifying something has to meet. But it's going to add another layer of complexity. I'm not sure that it's really going to make things any more. I'm not sure it's going to mean that value management can't occur.
No.
It simply means that some of the value management will happen before the performance. What did you call it? The PDB. PDB. Before that is signed off by the key stakeholders on a project. So at one level, it's it's going to require a level of education, and once that education's happened, there'll be the circuitous routes around it.
Yeah, look, I'd have to agree with
take on that cynicism.
I'll definitely take that on, but I know you well enough to know there's this positive streak running through you. So look, I see conflict. Yeah.
Throw some positive stuff in. Look, it's a great opportunity for the facade industry and for the sustainable design industry to collaborate and work together to develop, if you like, some standard pathways, standard responses to the NCC's requirement in this field, such that instead of us having, if we've got 15 different facade consultants or sustainable design consultants producing documents, instead of us having 20 different versions of the performance specifications that come out, perhaps we can get it back to 2 or 3. And you'll notice my inconsistency between number of consultants and number of specifications, because, consultants have different offices and people like to do things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at one level, obviously that's something you're trying to do through Speckle. And hats off to you for getting stuck in and trying to deliver it. I think the challenge is for consultants to come out of their individual commercial silos and start collaborating, and hopefully we're going to see a couple of vehicles on the landscape that will help with that in the not too distant future.
Yeah. So I hear you. The collaboration opportunity there, I think, is always going to be a good thing. But I've just updated the PowerPoint there, and there are challenges. We're always going to have challenges. There's lots of unknowns. Let's say, is it going to be verified? Is there going to be a process to actually identify that the specification or that report, that brief that's produced is going to be verified? What happens if there are amendments? There's always going to be conflicts. Our industries are complex. Construction timeframes take a long time. Things disappear. There can be errors. The fire and the acoustic and the thermal strategies may not all stack up. So you're going to have to change that down the line. So there's some sort of formalization of how that works. But I think there's lots of positive stuff. As Dave mentioned there, we've been looking at this for some time, and we formulated the reports in that's produced in Speckle. Even the free reports produced in Speckle to around PBDBs, just because it was the only sort of formal framework for reporting that we could sort of locate at the time, and we wanted to focus on really a future-proof type process. So all these systems that we have, all these applications that we have, use this framework already and have done, and they'll be tweaked a little bit more. So for anyone that's wanting to get on there, this presentation isn't about Speckle per se, or this discussion it's really just to cover the PBDBs. But if you want to grab it, you can just go in there and download the report, and that's freely available. You can add your branding, your theme to it, etc. But ultimately, when you spit out these reports, all of that is kind of captured already. So we've thought about this a long time back, and if you want to then link in your acoustic engineer or link in your fire engineer, you can just jump in there, link them in. They can add on a bit of plasterboard and say, hey, it's fireproofed. They can change the wall build up or the roof build up or the whole building build up to say that, hey, we've looked at this from an acoustic point of view, whatever the decision is. But we've already automated this, so that's really just a summary, just to say that, hey, we've got you covered there if you ever use this. And if you do go through the process of, okay, what was he actually talking about? Go back to the guidelines, have a look at it. You'll find that there's, placement. I haven't downloaded the document. You can jump on there yourself, unless someone wants me to break down the document. I'm more than happy to do it if you want me to do it. But it's kind of all there. So what I'd say is that probably going back to this slide here, there's lots of challenges, but I think there's lots of benefits. And I believe that we're all going to have to go through a process of understanding how this actually fits into our workflows. And as David was saying, is it above and beyond? Is it just that other thing? all in all, guys, it's not so different than what we already do. It's just kind of formalizing and moving stuff around. And if it helps us to not operate in silos and be a bit more cohesive in terms of our overall strategies, then, you know, I've got to say that with Annie hat on, I just find it as and I find agreement with the overall thing. But yeah, we're going to have to go through the headaches of how we tweak it and how we refine it and formalizing it as we move forward. So I only really had 30 minutes of content. I'm right on 30 minutes. I'm more than happy to open the floor and have a chat with anyone that wants to talk about this further. Anyone want to have a little chat about it, raise any other points, any sort of skepticism, any opportunities? Feel free. The part where it goes dead. Okay, so and if there's any other questions, I'll be around for 15 minutes or so. So if anyone wants me to go through anything, I'm more than happy to do so. Other than that, yeah, look, the only other thing I'd probably mention is that, again, I'd say, Dave, you're probably more across this than myself, but, you know, these reforms, the building reforms in New South Wales, which are actually slightly different than this, which is starting to impact industry on the same day that the PPDs come in. It seems to be all in the same subject matter. It's about creating transparency in the design process to push it down the line and confirm that, hey, we are I guess being aware of, you know, that the specification needs to be locked in early rather than later to avoid the risks of value management, and the reforms have additional consequences in the engineering industry in terms of you know, looking at your liability and making sure that your insurances are covered, and ultimately being slightly more responsible around your designs as you go through the process, because you'll be added onto a central government database as of the 1st of July in order to, I guess, practice what you preach. So get your designs locked in hard and fast. And probably for those in New South Wales, you probably want to get across that far more quickly than you get across this. Dave, did you have any comments on that? I'd love to hear where you sit with that, because, you know, David's based in Sydney, and he's going to be quite exposed to this, I'm sure.
Me personally, no, but I'll come to that later. So just to clarify, this is only Class 2 building, so
Correct.
It's only multi-unit residential or any building that contains a component of multi-unit residential. The government is flagging it may roll out more broadly in the future, but they'll take their time to see what happens first. As to what's involved, look, the reality is that we still don't know. The government is circulated a draft document on what a regulated design is intended to look like, and who can produce a regulated design and who can lodge a regulated design. A draft was circulated and was due to, the intent was, I believe, that they were going to publish it this week, but it still isn't published. Even when it is published, it's going to leave a lot of uncertainty. What we can interpret is that the intent is that the government wants a ready for constructed design to be lodged for the prescribed building elements, and anything to do with the building envelope, the facade, is part of that prescribed element. The government wants that ready to construct design lodged before a construction certificate is granted. Now, in the facade industry, that's absolutely opposite to where we're working. We're producing performance designs, and it's the industry that's coming back with the ready for construct design, and they're not doing that until, you know, well into the construction process. So there are going to be major implications on program, and I just don't know how that's going to unfold, and everybody in this industry has been running around trying to work it out. And
one crystal ball for one conversation, not two. it's yeah. Look, it's that's really interesting, David. I never considered, you know, that the fact that you obviously in the facade space we still heavily designing when the building is being constructed. So
Yeah.
that is a massive impact on time.
And the building commissioner, who's doing amazing things, it's just something that he either hasn't got his head around, and I think that's unlikely to be the case, or it's something that he's fairly and squarely targeting and he wants to change. Given where the facade industry is and how international it is, I think we're going to see conflict. I think we're going to see some challenges, and how it unfolds is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Coming back to PBDB.
Nice.
Look, I think that obviously they're going to have to fit into the process. How they fit in terms of the contractual timing and delivery of these regulated designs that have to be lodged, it's just going to be the same as anything else. You know, how do you get them procured in a timely manner in order to do something? Are we going to see facade contractors brought on way earlier in the process? Are we going to see an even bigger shift to ECI delivery? Or will we see a different shift and go towards more collaborative negotiation of contracts? The real thing for me is that it's going to be all in the contractual space. These are just a part of that process. And as I said earlier in my comments around performance specification, I see these documents being part of that performance specification process.
Yeah, cool. All valid comments from where I sit. Okay, guys. Well, look, I think Dave's wrapped that up quite nicely for us, to be honest. And look, if you had any comments, feel free to get in touch. Most of you have got my email address, and yeah, good luck with working out some of this stuff. We've all got our crystal balls, so let's see where things sit. And for those of you that are continuing to attend these webinars, thank you very much. It's really great to have you on, and all coming on and playing around with Speckle. So all that feedback is working. We'll continue to improve what we do, and that's the only thing we can continue to strive for, I think. So thanks a million, guys. Really appreciate your time. Take care, and speak to you all soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks.
Thank you, Darren.
No problem.